down there.
Oh, who's that is?
I'm not sure. Not sure. All right, good evening, everyone. It's 6 o'clock, so I'm going to start on time this evening. Welcome to the Auburn School Committee workshop for the purpose of presentation by BWP explaining the services they offer for a superintendent search. So we are zooming in this evening with Deborah Hill. Deborah, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Absolutely, absolutely. We'll go around and do some quick introductions so you know who you've got at the table here. My name is Karen Matthew, and I am the chair.
Michelle McClellan, Assistant Superintendent.
Dean Poisson, Ward 5.
Brian Carrier, Mayor's Representative.
Dave Susan, at large.
Ryan Belknap, Ward 4.
Rose Walker, Ward 1.
Pam Hart, Ward 2. Faith Fontaine, at large.
Adam Hansen, Business Manager.
All right, so Deborah, the reason we asked to meet with you this evening through Zoom is because a very neighboring school community across the river utilized your services when they went through a superintendent search. And so we have had some inquiries into what did Lewiston, Maine do to find their superintendent, and that led to your name, your company's name brought up. So that's why we thought we'd reach out to you tonight and find out what services you have to offer for us in this search.
Okay, excellent. I also did the search for Portland, Maine as well.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Great to know. Thank you. So I'm going to let you take us through from here. We have your slides up, and we can hear you, and we also have printouts of your slides as well.
Okay, the purpose of the presentation, the slides are really the Cliff Notes of proposal that we sent. And so I want to just summarize and highlight a few things, but spend most of the time allowing you to ask questions. So one of the things that we take into consideration is your mission and vision statement with regards to searching for an individual whose experience represents what you want for your community and your students. BWP founded a few years ago, merger of 4 national firms. And what makes us unique from, I think, the large firms, we consider ourselves a little boutique in that we offer personalized development of your search process. So while we have a template, we design our search process around what you need. There are 8 partners, but we have 40 plus associates across the country. So what we really understand is national and even to some degree an international search. Our main office is in Illinois, which is where I am. I'm speaking to you from Evanston, Illinois, home of Northwestern, just outside of Chicago. In addition to our associates, we have professional connections with a number of national and state organizations, which gives us a pretty broad outreach in terms of recruiting and also finding real deal about any of the applicants that we have. So we don't just rely on their application and paperwork, but we also tap into people who know them. There are 3 roles. I would be the lead consultant, the contact person with whoever you determine your liaison to be, and responsible for all communication, overseeing the process, reporting and contacting applicants and candidates, and also network with potential candidates. A consultant is directed and participates in networking the data collection, the review of applicants, and selection of the identified candidates. The associates are those professionals that we feel that we also tap in order to recruit candidates, and as I said, reference candidates as well. For this search, again, I would be the primary consultant. I am currently the managing director of BWP and Associates. I've been managing director for 5 years now, and prior to that, a partner. So I've been with BWP about 16 years. The consultant that would be working with me is Dr. Catherine Howes, affectionately called Katie, who is an assistant professor at the University of Southern Maine, Portland. But she was the former regional school Unit 21 superintendent in Kennebunk and Kennebunkport and Ardville, Maine. Questions so far?
Any questions so far from what you've heard?
I have a question. When you said associates, is that someone part of the BWP team?
Repeat that again.
Nice and loud, Pam, right into your mic, please.
When you said associates, does that mean a person from the BWP team? Or is that someone, when you said there's a lead consultant, a consultant, and associates, are these associates from the BWP team?
They're associates from the BWP team, again, all across the country. So it's not just the eastern sectors, but we have associates almost in every state.
So, Deborah, would you just tell us exactly who the associates are? I think that a clarification on that is that it's not, these aren't people who work for BWP, but they're contacts or organizations that you have. We're trying to gain clarity.
I think if you head back to your consultants slide, when you talked about your lead consultant being yourself, and then the consultant, and then associates. I think that's the slide, that when you put networks to seek potential applicants, can you talk a little bit more about what those networks are? And it talks about, provides feedback on applicants. So I think that's where the question might be coming from. It's a little gray, so we'd really like to really shore that and our understanding up in that.
Okay, in the proposal, there are lists of the associates. So you have to go back to the proposal. And I don't have my copy, so because I'm focused on the, but it's pretty much in the back. Found that?
You're saying we have a list of consultants in our packet?
Associates.
In the
Associates?
proposal that was initially forwarded to you,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's in our proposal.
I think so, yeah.
Anybody else have questions?
How many schools are you working with right now to find superintendents?
say that again?
How many schools are you working with right now to help them find superintendents?
I just completed superintendent search for my home district. That contract has been settled. We just completed providing Madison in Wisconsin with their final three, interviewing them this week. So other than working, we essentially have completed that search. And with Cal County in Atlanta, we just presented them with a slate of candidates. So when we get to that stage, From our standpoint, our hard work is done, and it's back to the school board or the school committee based on the candidates that we've recommended. So to that end, I don't have any currently that I'm working with beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let's keep going, Deborah. Thank you.
Okay, let me just share a little bit about my background. I'm a retired school superintendent from Evanston, Illinois, but also served as superintendent for 7 years in Glenview, Northbrook, District 31, which is an elementary school district. I've been in education for 20+ years. Scared to even think about how long I've been in education. But I served as a classroom teacher, curriculum coordinator, director of curriculum, assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, assistant superintendent for professional development, as well as interim acting and school superintendent. One of the highlights of my career is that I served as the president of ASCD, which is the largest educational professional organization, with the exception of teachers, in the country. We have about 119 members, 118,000 members in 119 countries. That's enabled me to do international travel. As a part of that organization, I've had an opportunity to travel to about 17 countries and look at their educational design and structure and policy and their professional development goals. So I bring a perspective to reviewing and looking for superintendents or executives, because I really think that the U.S. is not as far along as we need to be in terms of education. As I indicated, Dr. House, currently an assistant professor, but spent several years as a successful superintendent, and she actually participated in the search in Lewiston with me. Our search involved a 4-step search process. We had the specification, recruitment, assessment, and selection. One of the things that we start off doing is a planning meeting with the committee. While I love them, this would need to be a face-to-face where we set the search parameters, finalize the timeline, and identify any additional customized services that you'd like to have provided. Simultaneously, once if you select BWP, we immediately begin to launch our recruitment efforts by starting with a description of the position, which we place immediately on our website, as we are developing ads and specific specifications that would then go on your website and other places to begin campaigns. For example, in February, I will be attending the American Association of School Administrators conference in San Diego. If we are hired to do the search, would create a flyer that could then be circulated at that conference. And one of the things about the AASA conference is affectionately known as the Superintendent's Conference. So you will have superintendents from all across the country as well as international attending that conference. And so again, that's a service that's provided at no cost, but really has an opportunity reach out to those maybe looking for a position. We have a web-based application system that applicants would apply to us and monitor that so that the school department has no connection to the application. That way it remains totally subjective in terms of who. We treat internal applicants just the same as we treat everyone else. It's a very confidential process because what we've discovered is that people are reticent to apply for a position if they're not absolutely sure they're going to get it, because then it jeopardizes their current position. And so as much as we can, we keep all of the information and documents confidential. And a little bit later, I'm going to give you some examples of what happens when confidentiality is there. We also then begin our community engagement process. With this process, we interview the committee members, that would be you guys, probably during that same time period that we're sitting planning meeting, essentially to find out your take on the school department. There are 4 basic questions we ask everyone. What are the strengths of Auburn, the Auburn School Department? What are areas will polish or might be a concern? What skill sets are you looking for in a new superintendent? And then any other things the department committee consider in their selection process.
Deborah, can you repeat that last one, please? I caught 3 out of the 4. The very last one I didn't quite catch.
The 4th one is what other should the school committee consider in reviewing applicants? For example, do they have to have a doctorate? Do they have to be a current superintendent, or can it be with superintendent experience, but not necessarily the title?
Okay, thank you. Yep, thank you.
Once we've the committee members, we set up, that happens, we plan the time during the planning. Community engagement activities, which are threefold. If there are any additional community members you'd like for us to interview one-on-one, we do that. We set up focus groups where we ask you to identify groups, community, staff, administration, all those that have on the school department. We ask them the same 4 questions. And we put together a report that includes that information. The 3rd component is an online survey done via that essentially asks those same questions, but are open to any member of the community. And again, that becomes a part of a profile report. From that, we take where there's consensus within all the groups that we met with at about an 80% level of agreement on strengths, areas of concern, leadership skills, and other considerations. We then present that to you for and that becomes the route by which we then recruit and screen applicants. Question?
Any questions at this point? Any thoughts? Nope, none, seeing none. Deb, keep going.
Okay, so Those community engagement activities usually last about an hour. We work with your administrators or your office staff to set those up. You determine who will be invited. Typically, the groups are 12 to 15 individuals. I like to cross-pollinate and have representatives from different groups together, because what I find is that communities don't necessarily look at each other in terms of those specific characteristics of strengths, concerns, skill sets, and other considerations. Once we have presented the program and the profile, then we modify the description of the job, because now we have a focus, and we use that leadership profile to, again, our screening process as well as your screening. When we do the recruit, we recruit quality. We do not have a stable of superintendents that we're trying to find jobs for. We believe that each district is special. It has its own, and we start our application pool from scratch in terms of trying to provide you with options that will best meet your needs as determined through the leadership profile. We use our networking to not only just receive applications, but to tap people on the shoulder who may not know they're looking for this job. So, quick story, that's how I became a superintendent. I did not want to be a superintendent when I grew up. One of my colleagues tapped me on the shoulder, said, I know this is the perfect district for you, and then the rest is. So there are candidates out there who have the skill sets and characteristics that you may identify that don't know that they're looking to come work for you yet. And part of our responsibility is to tap them on the shoulder. And that's kind of where that network comes in, because then we can say, if we have a school district that's looking for X, Y, and Z, who do you know? And so we often invite people to apply as well. Question?
Nope, seeing none.
Okay. So assessment. Again, during that planning session, and we kind of do a backwards model in that we ask you to determine if you would like to make the announcement about who your new superintendent is so that you can work around the weather and your school calendar. And then we work backwards from there to set up the time for the deadline application, the community engagement activities, etc. Once the application deadline occurs, Katie and I will review applications independently, and we will select the top 2 or 12 individuals for further consideration. And then we will meet together, discuss all the applicants, and then collectively determine the top 10 or 12 that we want to interview. What we found is that when we do this process, we typically use Zoom to conduct the interviews because it gives you more ability in terms of interviewing people that may not be from the area, and it's very cost effective. Once we've conducted that interview, we continue to do a background check. We Google individuals, and it's not the background check that you would use for your finalists, but it is one that will let us know if this individual has any issues. And if they do, tell you that. We try to be very transparent and let you make a determination in terms of how important what we find is based on the individual. Then we come to you with 4 to 6 of the applicants that we think best meet your leadership skill profile. Once we bring that information to you, we summarize, give you their background, why we're recommending that you consider them, and you determine if you are accepting of the candidate pool and establish a first round interview with those individuals. As a part of that process, then we do some training. And again, so this is like my third week of this, in that we train you to conduct the interview, what questions you want to ask, what questions you shouldn't ask, and there's a protocol. We provide you with rubrics, systems for reaching consensus, and help walk you through that first round interview process. Once you complete your first round interview, then we suggest that you screen your candidates down to the top 2 or 3. Then we recommend have what I've termed a safety district. And that would be where you invite each of those candidates back one day to tour your facility, meet with some of those focus groups, visit with schools, visit with community members, and ultimately have a second round interview with the board or with the committee. During that second round interview, we suggest that you have asked the candidate to prepare a presentation on a topic that he So, for example, if you want to see how well their communication skills flow, then you may ask them to do a short 10 to 15-minute presentation on a controversial issue that they've had to deal with and how they've communicated that with the board or with the committee or with the public, as an example. But you can determine what you'd like for them to present to you. That second round interview will have been prepped for. We did the initial interview training. Once you've completed those second round interviews, then you select your candidate. Now, if nobody appeals to you, we either go back to the drawing board at other applicants within that pool, or we reopen the search. That's your call. But I have to tell you, 15 years of doing this, I've never had to go back and reopen the search. So we've talked a little bit about preparation and your committee interviews, and we will assist your legal department or the committee itself in terms of contract discussions for the new person. One of the things we do is ask them to provide a list of what they would like to see in their contract and share that with you so that you have a starting point for discussion. Once you've selected the finalists, we work with you to figure out what the transition process would be and how you would go back and introduce an individual to the community. We ask that until you get to your final three, that the names of the candidates remain confidential. And so the little story that goes with that is I did a major search in a metropolitan school district, and one board member called another board member from one of the potential candidates' districts. And I'm not sure what conversation took place, but ultimately we got a candidate that, because he was not a minority. This opened up possibility of a civil rights suit, putting the board, the committee members in jeopardy, putting BWP in jeopardy, because there was concern that the confidentiality had been broken with the communication between the two board members. Within that same district, the newspaper, and I know how it happened, but long story, but ended up publishing the names of some potential candidates. And again, it created a problem. There were 7 names. 2 people had not applied and were just considering it and asking questions. 2 people had applied. 2 people we weren't going to consider because we didn't feel that they met the criteria. And 1 person was a definite. And what ultimately happened with the publishing of the names in the paper, one of the candidates had been applied. Their board president called me hysterical because she didn't know that that person was looking for a position, and they were the person in their district referendum, and she was concerned about the negative effect that would have on the referendum if the public felt that this person, the lead person, was not going to be around. So we take the confidentiality very seriously because we don't want to put the committee or department in legal jeopardy. We don't want to be in legal jeopardy, and we don't want any individual's career to be damaged because they're considering submitting an application for your school.
I don't think any of us want that either.
So, here's some things that BWP guarantees. I can't tell you about any other firm. I don't work for them, so I don't. But we be on call, both Katie and 24/7. And again, another funny story. And I believe it actually was Lewiston, and they were having a discussion when they were working on their interview, and they had a question. So they called me, and I had to go off in a corner of Bed Bath & Beyond in order to be able to respond to the question because I was shopping. But it was important to respond to them. So the point being, I'm available 24/7 throughout the process. The next thing is that BWP will mentor the new superintendent and the committee at no additional cost for that first year. We believe the transition process is critical, and we want to do our help. Now, it doesn't mean that be on site, and maybe be on site, but we are available for communication, conference, follow-up resources, whatever you need in order to make that transition a smooth one.
Can you give us some examples of I know you talked about, the transition process. Can you give us a few examples of specific mentoring that you've offered?
Okay. In Portland, when the superintendent arrived, there was a question about his evaluation to structure the evaluation process. And so I sent them some documents, some materials responded to questions about what were some effective processes for evaluation and gave them 2 or 3 options to consider. In another situation, the school district was going into contract negotiations, and they had some questions about the amount of input that the new superintendent, not only input but engagement that the new superintendent could have. So it's typically questions for additional resources or feedback that occurs, and that can occur by phone or by Zoom.
Thank you.
The next part of the guarantee is if candidate does not complete 2 years in the position, we will repeat the search for expenses only. And what that means is we don't charge a fee. We just incorporate whatever operational expenses are, travel, work with no fee for the consultant. Again, I've never experienced having to do that, but that is a guarantee. We don't have a stable, and we do not place a previously placed candidate in another search during their initial contract with you. Now, they may go to another firm if they're going to seek another position, but we don't go back in and take one superintendent out and put them in another district. Our fee, the consultant's fee, are $15,500 with estimated search expenses for administrative support in the amount of about $7,000. This includes electronic stakeholder surveys, consultant expenses such as travel, operational expenses for the search in and of itself. But as a total, your fees would not exceed $22,000. I have to tell you that every district that I've worked with, you come in under budget. The third part of additional potential costs for you would include professional publication advertising. We estimate it would be about $3,000. Any in-district communications, whatever you're doing that might cost that across the Department of Stores. Candidate travel. And again, we recommend electronic interviews for that first interview, but for your semifinalists, we want to have them face-to-face, and you would reimburse them for reasonable prep. If there's an external background check beyond what we've done, and typically it's for the finalists, you would absorb that cost, and we suggest that whatever external background check you do for your other administrators, you would do the same for your superintendent. Any in-district meetings, for example, the focus groups that we talked about, if there's, fees for space rental or refreshment or educational materials or whatever, that again would fall under the department in terms of additional cost to you. And site visits, the day in the district, again, be a cost that you would bear if you're transporting people back and forth, etc. Questions so far?
Questions so far? Go ahead. Make sure you speak loudly into the microphone, please.
How much of the work is there any burden put on the district or any employee that having to do any of the legwork, or does BWP do all of the legwork and we basically sign a check and you do it all?
Your administrative staff, typically it's the board president or the board secretary, has to do a lot of the legwork working with us, because your building, your schedules, your community people. So we facilitate the conversations and discussions, but we don't have the knowledge to be able to establish and set up.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
One more. The consultant fees, that's for both of you, right? The 15,000 is for both of you?
Yes.
Okay, you want to take us through your track record?
Again, we're nationally known. 95% of our candidates are placed, that we place are offered a second contract. We haven't had a single candidate that we placed involved in any negligent or criminal activities with regards to their duties. We do a really good screening. Any superintendent selected by BWP continues to be successfully employed in their positions. And again, I've never had to go back out and redo a search. This year, we're really pleased in Missouri and Illinois. 3 of our superintendents that have been placed have been nominated for Superintendent of the Year award. And so we're very excited about that. It speaks to the quality of the candidates that we place. 55, we had within Illinois, we did an assessment, and these were some of the statistics related to that evaluation. That 55% of the students are still leading the districts in which they were placed. The shelf life of superintendents tends to be about 3 to 5 years, and we have a number of superintendents that go well beyond that. 20% of the superintendents retired from the districts in which they were placed. One of the things we find that many communities want stability. They don't want somebody that their school system as a climbing something else. 94% of our students, the superintendents successfully completed their first 3 to 5 year contract. 82% work beyond their 3 to 5 year contract. And for Illinois, superintendents serve in the districts they were placed in significantly longer than the state averages. I was superintendent for 7 years before I retired. The next slide just goes on and on and on. Brag some more about how school board members agree or disagree. And one of the things, just to summarize, most of the firms offer very similar services as far as I can tell. And it really becomes the difference between the consultants and the relationship with the school committee members. And we pride ourselves, again, on personalized service. So we get very high praise from the districts that we work with and the school boards that we work with, because we work very hard to develop a trusting, positive relationship.
I just have a quick question. You said on a slide back that from 2003 to 2017 that you've placed a bunch of superintendents. How many is that? So because you're giving a lot of percentages, like 94% of superintendents successfully created or completed their initial 3 to 5 year contract. So I want to know, how many total have you placed since or during that time frame?
We typically do about 20 to 25 searches. And this year we're really reaching. This past year we had reaching about 30, and those statistics still hold pretty much for our track record in terms of placement and longevity of placement.
Okay, so between 25 and 30 a year?
Say again?
Between 25 and 30 a year?
Yes,
Thank you.
for the whole firm. Again, YBWP, our record of success speaks for itself. One of the things that both our clients tell us as well as our candidates is they appreciate the professionalism with which we deal with them. I'm very much a hands-on consultant and pretty laid back relative to the search process, but super, super committed to the children in terms of, I really believe the leadership at the top shapes what happens in the schoolhouse. And so I'm always looking for dedicated educators who like kids and who are really about what's best for kids. We've got extensive recruiting resources. We talked a little bit about our professional network, our personalization, and the fact that you have one consultant that's very familiar with Maine, one who's becoming very familiar with Maine, with that having done 2 searches. And again, it's very positive about what's happening in your school system and wanting to see that continue.
So, excuse me.
That's our story, and I'll take any other questions that you have.
Go ahead, ma'am.
So you said that you have about 20 to 30 that your search is going on. So does that mean that, but you, Deborah, and Katie would be solely working, if we were to hire you, would you be solely working for Auburn, or would you also be working with another school to get a superintendent?
Katie would be solely working. At this point, I would be working for Auburn, given the 2 or 3 that I've just finished. But I don't know what's going to come up in the, in the future. But typically, I don't do more than 3 searches a year. It's a compacted amount of time in terms of the consultant work. I may work on a search where I'm not the lead, and so then I don't have those responsibilities. As the managing director, I sometimes have to step in and fill in. Not being the lead on the search, which has a different workload. So for the most part, well, you have Katie 100%, and you would have me probably anywhere between 80 and 100%.
Deborah, given our timeline right now, where we're meeting with you tonight on January 15th, and our current superintendent's contract ends on June 30th, can you give me an overall understanding or sort of what your thoughts are around the timeline that we're looking at to have someone in place by July 1?
I would suggest that you're going to try to have your search completed by mid-March. And again, it will be around your school calendar. That all would be determined during the planning session. Mm-hmm. The hardest part of the search process, from my perspective, is getting 8 people to have 2 sets of dates where they're all going to be available to do the first round interview and the second round interview, given that everybody has a life and a family and other responsibilities. Once you get those sets of dates nailed down, everything else can then fall into place. So given that you're looking at the end of January, I'm looking at maybe the end of March, no later than the beginning of April. You'll want to give 2 weeks time to set up your community, engagement activities. So the sooner you get started on that, the better. That's the other critical factor, is setting those up and keeping ready for that. Once you've done that, then again, schedule your day in the district so that your candidates know if they are selected and can fit that into their calendar. So you're in the middle of superintendent hunting season. You've got time. There's a field out there, and so I think you're in a good position in terms of your time.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Well, we have her on the line. No one else? All right, Deborah, we thank you so much for your time. You've given us a lot to think about, and we do appreciate your time. We will be in touch very shortly, that I can guarantee.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you.
How do you hang that? I was gonna say she could disconnect.
There he is.
Nice tie.
Goodbye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so you've gotten a lot of big information. We heard from MSMA at the retreat on Saturday, and you've just heard from this presentation as well. So you're not being asked to make any type of decision tonight, but I am opening up for any type of discussion, any thoughts that you might be, that you might have, anything might percolating in your mind. You've heard both the different price tags offered with these, along with the services that are offered with these. So we want to open it up for open discussion. Yes, Brian?
Yeah, so I have two concerns. One is the proposal here feels like building a house. Feels like when we built our first house, it was, here's the base cost, everything you do is an additional cost.
Right.
But the additional costs aren't really reflected, so how do you budget for additional costs? You know, they said that their fees and expenses won't exceed 22.5,
But
but
there's the but.
there's a lot of buts down there.
A lot
And
of
obviously, it's
buts.
à la carte, but it's still a lot of buts.
Yeah, without price tags.
Without price tags.
Yep.
So that's my first concern.
Okay.
The other concern, if I heard it correctly, was the fact that there's a lot of legwork on the chair and the administration. That was the two concerns I had mostly. From a pro side, I liked some of the guarantees. I mean, those are in place for good
Stats.
reasons.
Yeah.
But in my personal opinion, the costs right now kind of outweigh for me, outweigh the benefits. I think the legwork one especially, you know, the cost, obviously, you know, we can work through that if we really wanted to, but it's a lot of legwork on.
We're paying for those guarantees.
We're paying for these guarantees and we're paying them for a service, but we're doing all the legwork. So those were the concerns I
At a
had.
premium price.
At a premium
So I
price.
say, I don't think
Very
you're getting
premium.
a whole lot more from them than the folks we heard Saturday.
Remember to use your microphone, sorry, but just to remind you.
No,
Well, it's for the
you're
public.
actually on air.
We're on air.
Yes, sorry, that is correct.
You're always on air.
Look,
And in the
Everything-
past,
The
we've
little
heard a
thing over
lot
there?
about people not being happy that they
Yeah,
can't
so
hear us.
jump right up in there. So can you, honestly, can you just repeat what you
Yeah,
just
no,
said?
I was just gonna say, I don't think their proposal is any richer than what we heard on Saturday. And the fact that the Saturday folks are local, I Googled them while we were on the phone, and they have, if their website's up to date, 9 of their 14 clients are based in Illinois. So when they say they're coming under budget, well, I would presume that's the biggest reason why.
Right.
And this is difficult. I was in Skype calls all day today, and I hate them. I thought that woman Saturday she sold me.
MSMA, or, yeah,
MSMA.
yeah.
But that's just where I'm at.
I'm going to ask Michelle just to share a couple of things that you shared with me in speaking with Lewiston. I think that will have and Adam, you are both, know the final price that Lewiston ended up. They picked some à la carte items, as well as just some feedback from their own central office staff, how they felt about the workload from them point of view as well.
Did we share any of that on Saturday? I can't remember if we got into it.
Some of it, yes.
Adam, and I don't know what the à la carte items were. I think what we heard was travel and advertisements. Is
Travel
that
and
right?
advertising.
Was-
And at the end of the day, I think it was 28,000, but I'm trying to pull that up and verify that.
Make sure and verify that that was around it. So, yeah, as I shared on Saturday, Adam shared, we heard that there was a good amount of work up front in the beginning around the community forums and setting.
From them.
from them.
From
where
BWP.
They shaped those, designed those with input, but basically, I heard more about what they sounded like from Dr. Hill tonight, where they had that formula of 4 prompts, right? And they asked those 4 prompts in the different settings. They did not set up those meetings. Those were done by staff. As you can, she answered your question, Pam, around it. It does make sense. We're here. We know the people. We know how to get the phone numbers or contacts, whatever that might be. So there was that they felt the support was more in the upfront, the advertising, the community forums, the screening. As you heard, the screening at the beginning is totally them. That's all them. So there was no part of the staff involvement at that point. From there, once you moved into the slate of candidates that were coming to our local committee to interview, that's where the work shifted and became predominantly the local staff. Was there anything else I said to you that was?
No, those were the points. Those are the points. Just
Sorry, I'm not finding the number, but I'm pretty solid on that 28. It's
Yeah.
definitely 28 something.
Okay. I mean, obviously, this is going to be a very critical function of this board, and so that's why you're not being asked to make any decisions tonight. When we come together again during our next meeting, at that point, we'll have some decisions that we are going to vote on publicly. First one being interim or full. The second one being if we need to make the next decision, depending on which way we go, what we want to do as far as hiring. Okay?
That's for next.
That's for
meeting.
next
All right.
week. That's for next week, the 22nd. It's on the agenda for next time, because we've heard, I think the comforting thing for me in hearing from both companies that we've heard from is that our timeline is very doable. That we're not being told this is an impossible task you have in front of you, but it's a possible timeline as long as we start the ball rolling and make some decisions. And I'm going to come back to it's a very critical one, maybe one of the most critical we make together as a board. Okay. Anyone else want to put anything out there while we're in the midst of discussing this tonight?
Well, I guess my question,
Microphone.
with my
It's
big
Dave.
mouth.
He took the words out of my
I guess my
mouth.
question would be, the funds that we'll have available. I mean, I know we have some money that is out there, but, I don't want to say that we'll go with this group if we can only raise half the money. I'd like to sort of get some kind of a ballpark of exactly what we have to work with, because if you choose this company, and we know what we're, basically looking for the price, we've got to have that amount of money.
Absolutely.
If we can't, garner that type, I sort of, it tells you who you need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, that would be on our money man.
I think my input as far as that is, if the board felt strongly about BWP, and that was the way you wanted to go, then that would be my task, to identify for you exactly where that, say, $30,000 is going to come from. Do I think it's doable? Yeah. Do I think it would take a lot more digging and looking than the MSMA? Yes. So I guess that's my feedback on that. I can't pinpoint right now where to find that. But if I wouldn't let that rule out BWP for you. That's my take on that.
Right, if that was the direction.
Right.
Then the staff would have to go back, like we do, and make decisions when things happen about where that money would come out of, would be coming away from something
I
else.
mean, there are certain lines
Right,
in maintenance that comes to mind that we could say, all right, let's look at these lines and what could we put off till July if we had to, and therefore say, we know we've got this money.
Okay. Great questions, thank you. All right.
I guess I'd like to
Rose?
just say one thing, though, is that with BWP, I appreciated the detailed timeline and plan. I know with MSMA, there doesn't really seem to be as much of a detail about process and, facts and figures and all of those things.
So what are you thinking, I think in my mind, and if I heard MSMA correctly, that would fall into place once we said we are giving you the green light, then that would be very tightened right up for us.
And MSMA had actual dates where this
Yeah.
meeting, all committees, because I remember looking and saying, I'm on vacation, so I won't be able to sit on that. So I find that MSMA was more scheduled in detail, saying we're going to meet this date, this date, this date,
She
and it's
had
going to
a-
cost this much.
There was a list of
There's a-
dates that she had. Oh, yes, there you go. Yeah, there was a tight list of
But
dates
that-
that she gave to us.
But we were still looking at staff getting
Right.
a lion's share of, elect-
With MSMA?
well, actually with both of them. It's-
Well, it sounds like both of them
Now,
would be.
yeah, it's,
I don't think we want to surrender
No.
too much, you know what I mean? I think there's a piece
Yeah.
we need to own.
Yeah, one concern I have with BWP is that they, the first 10 to 12, we have no play in that. We could have the
Absolutely
perfect candidate, and they completely make that selection. That concerns me, that they narrow it down to, was it 5 to 6 or 3?
like 6.
Like 10,
Yeah.
it was 10 to 12, right?
But we don't. but
Out of
we-
10 or 12.
Out of 10 or 12. So we
They-
don't get to see 8 of them. Like, we would never see their application come in front of us. Where with MSMA, I like the fact that, we'd be reading each application.
MSMA weeds out just those who have spelling mistakes
Who don't
or
meet our
incomplete
criteria.
packages or didn't, completely just do not meet our minimum requirements.
I mean, by no means do I want to put, I know it's going to be a lot of legwork for administration and staff, for the board. However, I do feel like we have to have our hands in the pot significantly, because we're going to have to answer to, ultimately, we're going to make the decision, and we need to be able to confidently answer why we made that decision.
Yes.
So that is one of my concerns with BWP.
Would MSMA have the same reach as BWP? Like they were talking about the superintendent conference or whatever, and like it seems like they're pretty involved in a lot of things. Do they have the same kind of reach?
Yes, she did state that we would be posted nationally, that I believe she's attending the same conference and
yes.
doing the exact same
that's the same
thing.
conference.
That's
It is
good.
the same conference. I sort of picked up on that, thinking,
Okay.
yeah, I do.
Because
I
that's
imagine
big.
every consultant is in San Diego next week for this conference. That's just
Absolutely.
Looking for clients.
It's your pool of candidates showing up
And they
right
should
there.
be.
Yeah, and they should be, yes.
For me, I really just want a national search. I want transparency. I want, just like the public to know that we are doing this. It's not an inside deal. We're doing a
Right.
national search. We're doing due diligence
There you go.
on
Well,
what
that gets
needs
back
to
to
be
what
done.
Faith said, that, if we get our hands on the applications, then we're not relying on an agency to do that fine of work for us. We're actually going to get the paperwork and look through it and say, okay, this is why we chose this person, and it gives us that much more credibility when we come back to answer for it.
And either of these are national reach,
Yes.
Right.
either of these agencies, so.
Same websites, they both quoted some of the same websites they were quoted the other day as well, so.
Can I just say, I am a little concerned that they are in Illinois, and the fact that, again, this may be, that we had to do a Skype when it's a huge investment. That was, it was hard to understand her.
Yeah.
The fact that they're that far, I understand that, but that's an added expense for travel expenses. That does concern me. And the fact with MSMA that they're going to be there for us whether we hire them or not, that says a lot,
Right.
in my opinion, and they're local.
Yeah. Dan, did you want to,
Yeah, I
anything
kind of
particular?
agree with her, too, same
Yeah.
thing. She was very good. It seemed like they are more helpful.
Yeah.
They're going to be way more helpful through the whole process than,
Yeah,
than
than
Yeah.
BWP? Okay. Okay, great.
just a...
Okay.
Know, too, that, like, I'm playing devil's advocate, because I like MSMA, too, but Lewiston has had such success with this new superintendent, and there's a lot of hoopla about that, right? And they went with this group, and so I know that if we do decide to go with MSMA, there'll be a lot of people saying, well, why didn't you go with BWP? Lewiston did that, and look how great they're doing. So there is that, and I'm just saying, obviously, we're going to do our own thing, but I know that that's going to That's a factor, too.
Lewiston is still fresh, so anybody's going to do is going to make a big impression, in my opinion, the first 6 months, the first year. You know, that's when you're go, 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 and at some point, like, that's my opinion. I'm concerned for Lewiston, things
Well,
I've
and the
heard.
other- And getting, sort of piling on that, is that one of the biggest issues that we have is that people will come to us with, well, the cost of that, the cost of that, the cost of that. Well, we're looking at the cost of that, and we're keeping it local, and the person's going to work for us after we get finished doing this. That can be a big plus in the box.
Yep. Dave?
No, I was just going to say, this is due diligence. We're doing
Yeah. Yeah.
And regardless of what we do, there'll be critics. It's
Oh,
just,
yeah.
that's human nature. And I think we can defend anything to say, hey, you know what, we had a process. This is where we landed, you know?
We decided as a group.
Right.
It's not, Pam didn't decide, Dave didn't, Karen, you know, we discussed this, we had open conversation, we interviewed. And like Dave said, no matter what,
Yeah.
we're going to hear critics. I think as long as we follow the process, we can answer to that, and
I can give reasons for our choices. That's really what it comes down to.
As long as as long as we're making the process, and both of them have stated that the process is a huge importance. Making sure that we're making sure the community's getting a say in this.
Yes.
You know, local government, the students, the teachers, everybody's going to get I don't want to use the term, the shot at this.
An
Everybody's going to get
opportunity?
a
Piece of
buy-in,
pie.
something
Yeah.
to say about this.
Opportunity to
And
say,
as long
yes.
as we're making that available to everybody, that will go a long way also in saying, look, you know, you may not have participated, but the opportunity was there.
you received the survey.
Right.
Yep.
I think that's huge. I think involving the community, involving everybody, because even the voices of, you know, discern, they've had the opportunity to make their,
I don't think we can
piece.
make an informed decision without all that.
no,
input.
absolutely.
So I think that's sort of where we're at. So you have lots to think about until next week when we meet, and I will ask you which company we are going to be going with in our search. I would encourage you to jump onto some of the Maine Department of Ed has some really great guidance for superintendent searches. Maine DOE has some guidelines for that, has some, what the superintendent search school committee role in a superintendent search is. It's really some good resources for you on there as well. Okay, something to research.
And Karen, I just wanted to point out, just Rose, I don't know if you noticed in MSA's packet, they did give you actually a range of actual costs.
Yep.
Yeah.
As
Yeah, I did
opposed
see
to a à la carte sort of way, so I wanted to make sure you saw that.
Can we also say, too,
Yeah.
because it's public, how much the MSMA, the difference between the two?
I think we're looking at about
it
10
something?
to somewhere, anywhere in the range from
Looks like could be a $20,000 difference.
10s to 18,000, so 10.3 was the most up here. 10.3 is the highest amount here, all the way down to, I know she did talk about if we wanted interim was, I think 500 is what?
Yeah, she said
Around
500.
500?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so here is 10.3 is the
So
highest.
10.3 for MSMA, 28 potentially,
If we
at
went,
least with
23
BW.
23
22.5
base.
plus.
Base, yeah.
Minimum 22.5 plus.
We're going to need advertising, we're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
need all those
Oh,
things
we're
that
gonna
they're
need all
saying
that.
à la carte.
Depending on the extent, I'm sure that
We
you
live in
might
Maine,
run
it
into
takes the money to
expenses
get
with
out here to us.
MSMA also, but where they're already including it, it wasn't really an add in.
Yeah.
This is not, well, you know, this is a future cost for you.
Yeah, we can budget that a lot better.
I mean, maybe I can't ask this, but do we know the reason Lewiston did not go with MSMA?
I do not know. I do not know that reason.
I mean, maybe.
Executive session.
I know they did hear from MSMA,
Okay.
but I can't speak to why they made that choice. I don't know.
Question.
No, I'm not sure at all. Didn't actually, that question really never popped in my head, why they didn't choose MSMA. So,
Good question, though.
yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question.
Is that something that,
I was just about to say, is that something we want to reach out and find out? Their choices as to why they would not want to go with MSMA. That's certainly something I can
Yeah,
find
I
out.
think we should find out all the information. I mean, we're not going to base it on that, but
Right.
maybe it's something to consider.
Absolutely. I think we can find an answer to that, hopefully. Does that seem doable? Okay, okay, all right, we'll have that information for you next time. So, with all of that conversation that we've just had, thank you so much for that conversation. And if something pops up, a question pops up, please email, reach out, so that you can have that question answered to help you make your decision before we come to our next meeting. With that being said, we are looking for, Michelle just reminded me, for those of you who have not yet turned in your FOAA forms, you only have a short amount of time to do that, to read the FAQs online, sign your form. We had one sitting here earlier. Do you know what you
I
mean?
put it in my pocket.
Is that about the onboarding? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
The frontline onboarding? Okay.
This
I
here.
actually have the FOA in my office.
Yes, you must
Oh,
turn
okay.
that
Yeah.
in. There must be, it was in your onboarding packet, and it tells you exactly what to do on there, and you have to sign it, fill it out, and hand it back in within,
120 days.
yeah.
120 days of
Fine, if you have
election.
one.
No, taking oath of office, excuse me.
Taking oath of office. So you took oath of office on December 18th, I believe, so you have 120 days after that to complete that.
yeah.
So if you have not yet done that, please get that in.
Isn't all that stuff online?
Yeah.
But I
And
also
you just
printed
have
them off.
to.
Print it out and then,
Yes, you print it
just-
after you
it's
watch,
in
you
the packet,
read
too.
through the questions,
when you talk about packet, do you mean like
That
that
first-
online thing, the frontline
no, when we
onboarding
first,
stuff?
yes, your onboarding stuff.
Because I had an issue with my social security card, so that's why I'm kind of behind on that
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
And I just actually, the invite kept going to the wrong place, and so I finally just got it today.
Okay.
So.
You're
I
okay, you're
plan
still
on-
within your
all
120-day
right,
window.
I plan on finishing that by the
You're
2nd.
still within your window, okay. If that one's all set, move on, public participation?
I thought you meant this.
Seeing none here this evening, and where this is not a formal, I don't believe I need to, I don't believe motions,
We
don't
just
believe
end.
I need any, but thank you all so much for coming out tonight. It's duly appreciated. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.